pray. Father, thanks for another day. Um, Thanks for life and breath and your provision again today, whether we're in San Diego or Oklahoma or Arkansas. So pray that you would lead our time. Pray that it would be helpful for each of us, encouraging, challenging, as we think about how we can continue to grow to love people and serve people and see them grow to become more like Jesus. So maybe you'd lead our time in that direction right now. So we love you and pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, well, let's hear. It's been 2 weeks. Any stories, good or bad? Challenges or fruit or questions or anything from previous?
So I got something. So one of the things that we did this last Thursday for our family mealtime together is we made a list of all the lost people that we possibly knew. And so the group should have done that. Our group came up with like 180 names.
Seriously.
We have the big group of about 20 people that were there. And we narrowed it down to 20 people, right? 17. We did 10%, one person for every. And so everyone's praying for them this past week.
Awesome.
And there's been 5 or 6 instances of someone that we were praying for that randomly reached out to us and wants to either come to church on Easter or get plugged into a missional community group, or just they haven't talked to them in 3 years, and out of the blue they this person reached out to them and struck up a conversation. So
really cool. Really cool. So you came up with 180. Did you actually make a list of 180?
Yeah, so everybody made their individual list, and then we put them all together, and then we called it the Lost People Draft Party in our group. It drafted 17 of the good soil.
That's awesome.
And then Sammy, I don't know if the person made your list or not, but a neighbor, she ended up going to the park and having a conversation with a neighbor, and she messaged all of us saying, "Hey, I'm having this conversation with my neighbor. Pray for our conversation."
Cool.
Somebody that didn't make our short list but was on Chotzi and I's personal list, she went and had lunch with them, and they're coming on Easter, and they're from a Muslim context, actually here visiting from somewhere in Eastern Europe. I can't remember where. Kosovo, maybe?
Kosovo, yeah, it's Muslim.
Yeah, so I think that's right. And then just really cool stories like that of hey, we got a little intentional about just thinking about lost people and throwing some prayers up, and next thing you know, God's doing cool stuff.
Yeah, love it. Love it, love it. Wasn't it cool for your group to actually see that God's already put you in the middle of the mission? 180 lost people, naturally. Didn't cost you anything, didn't require, just living life. And God has put you in the middle of enough lost people to keep you busy for a few years at least. So love that. Love that. Well, it's cool too. We talked about this, but not only praying intentionally now for that 17 or whatever the number is, but now just being more mindful of inviting, like you said, okay, the 17 are going to get a clear personal invitation to anything we're doing around Easter or the next party or the next time we, do whatever. But now you're clear or more clear on who needs those those regular invitations. And then also, so that's kind of, you've got prayer, you've got the invitation to the bigger group things you're doing. But then I love, you already said, thinking individually about those 17 and saying, okay, should we get coffee with them? Should we go to the park with them? Should we go work out with them? Should we watch the Final Four with them? Just, you know, just brings focus. Just brings focus. Um, and just makes the whole process of inviting and just makes it way more clear. So, what a great story, Tyler. Anybody else, anything similar to that, or
So in the past, we've been doing the missional community stuff for a couple of years now, and we had the other week did last year. I think it was like what 5 for 5, kind of
yeah,
the same principle. Pick 5 people. My cousin, or not my cousin, my wife's cousin was on that list for her, and 2 weeks ago he came and he went to our missional community and didn't come last week. I missed last week. Had stupid COVID, but all good now. And he will be back this week. So that is really neat. So
that is.
just took a long time. I know that's kind of my story with through Tyler. I mean, Tyler, I was kind of on his list. He told me 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and here I am. So that's really neat. And then also just literally since Sunday, kind of like I had emailed and told you, and since then I've added 3 more people. So we've had 3 families that are going
Awesome.
to join. Haven't been in missional community. Well, one has. I've been in a year or two, but 2 new families that are going to jump in tomorrow. So we're literally going to add 12, or I think it's 6 adults and about 7 kids to the mix now. So there will literally be like 10 kids and about 10 to 12 adults. So
Awesome.
cool
Awesome.
growth. It's going to be wild.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think we're going to move it outside around the bonfire, let the kids play the zip line.
Good. Good.
We'll try to adapt.
Good. It's part of the fun. I like saying it's a beautiful mess. So get that many people in your backyard or, part in your house, part outside your house. And yeah, it's gonna be a little chaotic, but beautiful with all the potential of those relationships. You said one thing, or a couple. You said one thing I wanted to comment on is just I've had people tell me in the past say something like, "Is it a little bit controlling or manipulative to have people on a list?" Like you're talking about a list. And my response to that is it could be negative or manipulative in some way, but I see it the opposite way. If you look at my desk right now, I've got lots of little notes on it. Okay, I'm a post-it note guy. Okay, here's my little current blue post-it note pad. But on many of those post-it notes are details about people that I love. And those details about the people I love are how I want to love them better. So you could say, man, you put people on a list, or you put your kids on a list. Absolutely. Some of these post-its have the names of my kids with specific details about how I want to love them, how I want to care for them. And by having them on a list, it helps me to prioritize them. If they weren't on the list, if they weren't on the note, I would forget. I would not be as thoughtful about them. I would not remember. I would not be as consistent to do certain things if they weren't on the list. Does that make sense? So I think we can see the whole list idea in a very positive light to say they're on the list because we believe God wants us to love them well, wants us to serve them well, wants us to be thoughtful about them consistently, wants us to be prayerful about them consistently. That's why they're on the list. So it's not some weird um, uh, target. It's not like, oh, they're on our target list. No, they're on the list because those are people we believe we've been sent to love, and we want to love them well. By having them on the list, again, it's going to help us think about them, pray for them, invite them, serve them. It's just going to help us do all of that better. So, any thoughts about that idea? Maybe you didn't have any negative feelings about the list idea, so maybe it wasn't necessary for me to say all that, but that could happen with some people in your communities as you go and as you know, get more people connected. You might have some people say, "What's this list thing? Like, that sounds a little weird. Am I on the list?"
So one of the things I told them is like nobody encounters Jesus by accident. Like, so we want to be strategic and or we want to be effective. So we got to be strategic and intentional. That being said, let's not tell people they're on the list.
Right.
Unless hey, we've been praying for you a long time is great. But being like, oh no, we were targeting you on a list sounds a little like intense.
Well, again, so again, I have had people say this. They have said people found out they were on the list. What do we do? What do we say? And basically, what I just said to you is my response. It's to say you should be amazed. You should be amazed that God told them to put you on a list. Like, how cool.
We love you enough to pray for you and want to invite you and you encounter God. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, how cool is that? That, we believe there's this supernatural thing going on, and God actually is sending us to love you. And that's why you're on the list. And so, yeah, I think I don't think we have to be secretive. I don't think we have to be secretive about the idea or secretive about the list. You don't have to obviously talk about it much, but if it happens to come up, now you know how you can how you can talk about it. Anything else from last time? Or anything that's happened in your community the last 2 weeks? Any March Madness parties? No, none of that. It's okay. You're just waiting for the football season. I know.
So kind of our plan, Todd, just to fill you in, is this Thursday they're having the family meal, and they're going to discuss having intentional gospel conversations. So that whole handout.
Okay.
So it's like we've identified who, this is what we're going to talk about, and then the Thursday before Easter, Monday, Thursday, we're having a prayer-a-thon, so they won't meet. And then in April, the next week, they're going to do the 30-day calendar that we're doing right now.
Okay.
And then they're going to go be missional and have parties kind of after that. It's kind of rolling it out a little slow,
that's great.
But also trying to get people some handholds to climb up the missional mountain.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. Did any of you have a chance to watch any of the 1-minute videos? Don't tell me you didn't have time. It was only 8 minutes. Could have watched those going to the bathroom. Okay. Yes, any comments, thoughts? Thumbs up. That's good.
I thought it was extremely good. I kind of was going to ask Tyler if we could even like straight up just show that to our group. I mean, I can regurgitate it, but really, I mean, you say it so simply and like it's just well thought out. Like those are good. Even just to send, like I thought about sending one of them out to the group
Yep.
in a text. So like, hey, think about this today.
Yep.
Because I mean they are short and quick, and yeah, who doesn't have a minute and 7 seconds?
Yeah.
Watch a dude in a cool soccer jersey talk.
Good. Yep. And I would say send them out individually, send them out one at a time. But yeah, the idea is that those videos are addressing what are usually the primary challenges, in a community, and giving some encouragement and perspective on those things. So it's not like just 8 random, topics. It's like, no, those are pretty much the core topics you're going to need to talk about often, think about often, make progress with often. So 1 minute is just a 1 minute talking point to say, okay, how do we keep growing in this? Um, so yeah, you could put those out in a text or put them out in, various forms just to drip the ideas, drip the ideas into people's lives. So hopefully you experience that. Um, well, hey, let's talk about the theme I sent you, the 30-day plan. Okay. Let me say a little about it. And then I'd love to hear your um, perspective and just how you're feeling about it for your context. Okay. Because that's one of the important things with this. I talk with churches all the time, all over the world, about this idea. And I say, this is just an example. It's actually a real example. Okay. So that's not a theoretical plan, that's a real plan of a real missional community, but it's set in a specific context. So, but I think it's helpful to see it and to look at it and to say, okay, what's possible with our group? Maybe we can't do things on Sunday night like they do them. So when are our people available? Okay. Or maybe Wednesday nights are not a good time for DNA. Maybe it's Thursday mornings. Okay. Well, let's build that into our plan. So you've got to take the idea, you've got to take the example and say, how do we create our version of it that fits our people, that fits our circumstances, that fits our schedule? Okay. So that's a big thing. That means every one of your communities is going to have a different plan, right? They've got different people with different schedules and different friends, and they're just different. And so every community is going to have a different plan based on circumstances, based on relationships, based on schedule, based on kids, based on no kids, based on, yeah, where they're currently at. Okay. But I think what you saw in that plan is that we're trying to balance out the priorities of Bible, family, and mission. Those are, I think, the big three. If you want to say big three priorities. And there's other things we can add to them, but we want our people to be growing in a biblical worldview, in a, in their biblical reservoir. So we've got to say, okay, where's that going to fit into our plan? Where's that going to happen? Well, you can see it happens on Sunday mornings. It happens sometimes at family meal nights. It happens a lot in the DNAs. Okay, so that's the Bible piece. Okay, how about the family piece? How and when and where are we going to accomplish that? Okay, it's meals, it's parties, it's the park, it's all those places that are part of our monthly rhythm to say, this is us being good family. not us just being part of a church. You know, you hear it all the time. I'm assuming, especially in Oklahoma, that's the church we attend. Ugh, that language and even the thought of that makes me cringe. It's like the church doesn't exist to attend. The church wasn't established by Jesus to collect churchgoers. It's just not a biblical concept, but it's so much the reality with the church in America. Such a high percentage of churchgoers. Well, again, it's just not a New Testament concept. Like it's a man-made Western um, concept, is that it would, you know, that the expectations would be so low for Christ followers that the primary goal is just to get them to a church building, get them to a church meeting. Okay. So, yeah, I think you all understand that and agree with me on that. So, basically, this idea that we're family. Yes, we do gather sometimes on Sunday or sometimes in a building to do certain things. For sure, that's a little part of it. So we need to do that too. But the biblical narrative, Old Testament plus New Testament, is God's family. The Bible's full of family language. The Bible is full of family metaphors. And our, you know, one of our primary identities is that we are adopted sons and daughters. So that's all family reality, right? So as we look at our 30-day plan, which again is just a month. So I didn't say that, but you might be saying, okay, why 30 days? From my experience, if you have bigger plans like a 6-month plan or a 12-month plan, it's hard for people it's hard for people to navigate that. It's hard for people to get their heads around that. Like planning for 6 months, we might be able to do and I think it's okay to have a general overarching plan or perspective for your community, like for the year. But then you got to break it down and say, if we don't get some details, if we don't get some specifics on our calendar, they're not going to happen. If we just try to live spontaneously, a lot of people like saying organically, it's just not going to happen. Okay. Organic things actually don't grow in a healthy way. You know that people love, certain Christians love talking about organic things. If anybody has gardened or farmed or raised animals, doesn't go well. None of that goes well if you just let it happen organically, spontaneously. Okay. Animals die, weeds grow up, and vegetables and fruit are never produced. Okay. Things have to be cared for, requires intentionality, requires consistency. That's why we make plans. But even in the plan, you can see, I think I mentioned, as we create these plans, we do have specific things locked into our schedule, but we are aware that some things will happen spontaneously. Because that's good family. My wife and I, we've got a calendar on the wall. Okay. Typical paper calendar. Okay. 30 days or 31 days or 28 days. Okay. Calendars on the wall. And we've got a bunch of family activities mapped out on there. Those are certain things locked into the calendar, whether it's sports practices or our missional community or just different things we're part of. But then a whole lot happens spontaneously. Somebody calls us or an opportunity comes up and we didn't expect it. They happen spontaneously. Okay. That's just normal life of a family. Same thing has to happen with our missional communities. We've got to get some things locked into the calendar. And then we have to have margin. That was actually one of the videos. We have to have margin in our lives so that some spontaneous things can happen. We're like, man, I didn't expect that to happen today, but I think I'm gonna invite these two guys from my missional community, and I think we'll go watch. I think we'll go watch the game, and you know, get a bite to eat or something. Okay, it wasn't locked into the calendar, but the opportunity came up because you had margin in your life, so that some of those things could happen. So that some of those things could happen spontaneously. Okay. We've got this non-Christian family connected with our missional community, and their daughter plays volleyball with our daughters. And the father texted us like 2 days ago and said, "Can my daughter hang out for an hour or an hour and a half with your daughters after the volleyball practice?" Wow, that wasn't on our calendar. It's like, man, we had a pretty packed day, and the girls had homework to do and had all this, but we were like, this is what it looks like to have margin for lost people, so that when they ask or when the opportunity arises, we can say yes. We have the ability to adjust. We have the ability to say, yeah, we were going to do that, but this is way more important. It's way more important for this 12-year-old girl, non-Christian, to hang out in our home. So that was cool. After volleyball practice, my wife actually drives my daughters and this girl to our home, and they hang out for an hour and a half. And then the non-Christian parents, one of them has to come to our house. So there's another touch point because the parents have to come. And then we talk to them some more when they're coming to pick up their daughter. Well, all that was spontaneous. Okay. So you're getting this organized, organic, or organized, spontaneous thing. But again, some of it has to be organized. That's why these 30-day plans, I think, are so important. But you have to sit down with your community, and not the whole community. Okay. Somebody's trying to pop in here. We made this mistake in the early days years ago, man. We tried to create these 30-day plans like with anybody who was connected to the missional community. It was crazy. It was crazy because some of the least committed people, some of the people who had no intention of following through on the plans, had the strongest opinions. So some of these people were throwing out ideas like, we should do this and we should do it at this day and this time. And it's like, are you really going to follow through on those things? And they had no, it was like, probably not. But I've got a loud voice. And so they were basically just hijacking the plans. And it was like, whoa, we've got to do something different. So we learned that those plans have to be created. They have to be discussed and created by the core of your missional communities. And then they get communicated out to the fringe or to the others in your community. But you've got to have the core establish those plans because they're the ones that are committed to them at this point. Does that make sense? So, okay, so I've just said a lot in the last 10 minutes about this.
Yep.
What are you thinking, feeling, hearing, all this?
Will you, in like 30 seconds or less, clarify for everyone on the call, would you say core, what you mean by that?
So the core of each of your communities are the committed ones who feel a sense of responsibility to help share leadership for your community. We would say that needs to be a minimum of 4. Again, that comes from experience. Minimum of 4, preferably 5, 6, 7, 8. So that core, those are the people, again, who feel responsibility, who are committed to each other like family. So that's one determiner, like who's ready to be part of the core. I say that there's three things that determine readiness: a love for Jesus, a love for each other like family, and a love for lost people. Are are they ready to go on mission together as a family on mission? Just those three things. If they've got that, I think they're ready. They could be invited into. That doesn't mean they're like super mature Christians yet. But again, they love Jesus. They want to love the community like family, and they want to go on Jesus' mission. When I read the New Testament, I think that was how Jesus, like, that was his selection process. If you look at the Gospels, um, the disciples were very immature in many ways. There's many things they didn't understand. We would put them in the baby Christian category. Okay. They were right at the beginning in many ways. So Jesus obviously wasn't choosing based on like competency. He wasn't choosing them based on education because they didn't have it. He wasn't choosing them based on like incredible gifting. I think he was choosing them based on are they genuinely desiring to be in relationship with me as their rabbi? Okay. So is there a genuine desire for that? Is there a genuine desire to live in community? Because the disciples didn't, they didn't know each other. They didn't know each other very well. A few of them did, a few of the pairs were brothers or friends, but they didn't know each other that well. But they had a desire to live in this community that was following Jesus. And then they obviously were ready to drop their nets to go on his mission. So that's what we see them do, right? So that's who's ready to be part of your core, are those types of people. But you've got to, the core of your community is so critical because if that core doesn't grow, you'll never have an opportunity to multiply. You multiply out of the strength of the core. So if you want to multiply a year from now, do the math, okay? You've got to have at least 8. You got to have a core of at least 8, right? So that a year from now, you could multiply and you could send a core of 4 and you can keep the other core of 4 to readjust and start again with some of the current people while you're sending the other core of people with some others to start a new community focused on a new group of people in a new neighborhood. Or does that make sense? So this core thing is really important, but the cool thing about it is as you invite more people into the core, that's like your leadership pipeline. I talk with churches all over the world. They're constantly complaining about lack of leaders. Don't have enough leaders, need more leaders. Where do we get leaders? It's like, well, what are you doing to develop leaders? What's like, and most churches have very poor, that's why they don't have enough leaders. There's nothing for people to lead. They volunteer in the children's ministry, or they volunteer with the worship, or they volunteer with this. That's not leadership development. Volunteering in one of those ministries and setting up chairs and making coffee, and those are good volunteer things. Those are good servant. It's a good way to build some servant muscle. But you're not going to grow up as a leader doing that. Chairs, coffee. Sorry. Okay. You're not going to become a leader doing those things. You will grow as a servant, which is good, but limited. So you grow to become a leader by leading things, by leading people. So as you are part of a core of a missional community, you're working together to lead that group of people like a family on mission.
God, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
So I know when we had spoke about the DNAs prior, there was not a leader, but you had mentioned that someone would kind of come out as what seemed to be a leader. Now, are you looking to have someone, like at least one person from this leadership core or this leadership pipeline in each DNA, or is it like any of 4 people at the church can just squad up together and get after it?
No, no, absolutely. What you said first. Okay. So say you've got 12 people currently in your missional community. You've got a core, we'll say of 6. I'm just going to throw out some workable numbers. You've got 12 people connected to the missional community. You've got 6 that are part of the core, sharing responsibility for it. You've got 4 DNAs, 2 for men, 2 for women. In each of those DNAs is going to be at least 1, if not 2, core people. Because that's part of their leadership development. Even you don't even have to say it like that. It will happen. That's part of the beauty of DNA too. As they are experiencing that depth of relationship and that consistency of needing to articulate the gospel, that's some of the best leadership stuff right there. So they're going to get it from being the main facilitator. It's kind of the language I usually use for what they do, rather than saying they're leading the DNA. They're facilitating a quality of relationship in those DNAs. So they're getting that, but then they're also, so the leaders, the core of each missional community, they're also probably going to meet, like, we'll say once every 2 months, just to check in and say, okay, how's our missional community doing? Is there anything we need to change? So they might have a formal meeting like once every 2 months, because you don't want to overload people with a whole bunch of more meetings, because they're already doing family meal nights and parties and DNA and all that. Can't overload them with more leadership meetings. So once every 2 months formally, but when you start living life like this, most organizational logistical things can be taken care of like along the way. Does that make sense? We do a lot of it just through text and short phone calls. Like if we've got a party coming up and the details need to be worked out, we don't need to have a meeting about it. Okay. Or, you know, teaching thing we're going to do at the next family meal night. We don't have to pull together an hour-long meeting about that. It's just not required. If you're living enough life together, you can talk about certain things a bit on Sunday morning. You can talk about certain things at the family meal night, at DNA, before, after. Like there's plenty of relational touch points, and the logistical details can get worked out along the way and then get supplemented by text and short phone calls. Another mistake a lot of churches make, way too many leadership meetings, elder meetings, too many meetings. I don't think they're that helpful. And they take too much time and they keep people from doing the better relational work. Does that make sense? So we have to always be saying, what's the primary relational work we need to be doing? And for your leaders, for your elders, you got to make sure, again, they're not so bogged down by organizational stuff that they don't have time to love each other well and then love lost people well. And unfortunately, we see it in a ton of churches. Most pastors, high percentage of pastors, they've done research about this. There's statistics that prove it, but they don't have any lost friends. Like, how's that even possible? How could somebody be leading a church that's supposed to be making disciples and they don't have any lost friends? It's mind blowing. It's like, what are we doing? It's like he's supposed to be the main example. He's supposed to be the main example of loving lost people and helping make new disciples. And yet he has none. It's like, come on. So anyway, that's another topic. When you look at that 30-day plan, then let's talk Oklahoma City. What do you think's possible? What do you think? Does the plan that you see laid out there, is it too radical? Is it too, what is it? Or is it actually encouraging where you're like, yeah, we could come up with something like that? Probably be on some different days, some different times. Might have some different details, but it's got a good pace. It's got a good pace to it. So, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, Sammy, Sonny, tell us what you think. Your thoughts, what works, what doesn't. I want to hear from you too.
Sammy, click unmute and talk.
Sorry, I was sending a text. I didn't catch that last part.
We're just wanting you to think about the Oklahoma context, your life of people in your missional community, and can you imagine creating a sustainable plan that fits the Oklahoma City context?
In terms of the activity that we've kind of been talking about,
Yep.
yeah, 100%. I mean, obviously in the summer it's a lot easier because the weather's nice. You can go to parks and patios, and everybody loves that stuff. But I mean, in the winter, you can still go bowling or go to arcades, go mountain climbing. I just, as we were talking, I just sent a message to my missional community group asking if anybody wanted to go hiking on Saturday. So,
Awesome.
just having a conversation. Normally I would just go ask one of my friends that I normally go hiking with. But since we're having these conversations, it's making me think differently.
Good. So even that kind of thing, like if you've got a group that likes to hike and they have some non-Christian friends that like to hike, you could build hiking into that plan, saying, hey, weather permitting, we're gonna hit the fourth Saturday of every month. We might need to adjust it sometimes, shift it, but we're at least gonna lock in fourth Saturday morning of every month to go on a half day hike or whatever, 2 to 3 hour hike, whatever it is. Does that make sense? But you see the difference there of locking something that fits your community, locking it into the calendar so that it's much more likely to happen. We don't lock things in, even with best intentions. They're not likely to happen. You know how your schedule works. If you don't get things locked in, other things push it out. So good intentions are not enough. Your good intentions have to result in a good plan.
And that's what I was initially looking at, is just how structured it is, but in a good way. Just because from my previous experience, it has been one of those things where either we're flying by the seam of our pants, or it's not it's consistent, but in terms of it even going to explaining, no, the first and third Sundays, those are the family meals. I think that tailors to and would probably be very beneficial to a lot of people. And I think in This is just like opening up my eyes to my previous experience. And honestly, the way that I operate is, all right, let's look at the month and let's nail down a date, but there's no consistency there. And then I wonder why it's just me
Yep.
and one other person,
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
like how it gets even specific to no, like this first and third, second and fourth, this is what we're doing. And we can plan in advance for that.
Good. Good. Well said. And what you just said right at the end is very key for a lot of people. If you can get things that specific locked into everybody's calendars, then they can plan around it. Because people have a lot of other life they're living, right? Work, school, extended family, just there's a lot of other life people are living. And so by having these things locked in specifically, when they're going to happen, where they're going to happen, then people can build the rest of their life around it. If we don't do it, the rest of life will dominate. And we wonder why stuff gets squeezed out constantly. It's like, oh, we've got a family thing next weekend. We can't. So, one of the things we learned, my wife and I, even in inviting like non-Christians to a party or park or whatever, and I don't know if this, yeah, tell me if this is true in Oklahoma too. We would wait and invite people like 3, 4, 5 days in advance. People were rarely available. Like, nope, got something going on Friday. Nope, got something going on Sunday afternoon. Nope, got something going on. So we realized that we had to push the invitation out further.
And that's literally where I'm at right now, is with that realization, is you can't
Yep.
ask people 3 days before.
Yep. We found 10 days, the likelihood that they were going to be available, like far, far greater. Well, if you're gonna make those invitations 10 days in advance, you gotta have a plan that sees those details in advance, right? So you can't just bounce week to week and hope stuff's gonna happen and hope people are available and hope there's gonna be consistency and hope it's not, from my experience, it's not gonna work very well that way. I mean, my wife and I are pretty organized, even with stuff on our calendar, even with thinking in this way. Um, we're consistently like, man, we've been wanting to do that thing. It was even kind of on our calendar, kind of, or on our to-do list. And 2 months later, we haven't done it. We were going to take the kids there, or we're going to, have these people over for a meal. Can't tell you how many of those situations are. It's like, man, we've been talking about having them over for a meal for like 3 months, 4 months. It's like, but it was just an idea with some good intentions behind it. Never got locked in to say, okay, let's invite them 10 days out, Friday night, grill some hamburgers. That's when things happen. When we're clear, when we're specific, when it's on the calendar, people know in advance, they can plan around it. So, say more. Oklahoma City, what are the challenges to this? Do people there like to plan? Are they good
So
at planning?
They like to weigh their options.
yeah, so the big thing here, it would be like people like to plan, but also there's probably a third to half of the population in our age group that have real bad FOMO. And so it's like, I won't commit to that
Okay.
because what if something better comes up? Or it's
Yep.
I'll commit to that and then I'm going to bail because something better came up on Friday than Secret Church or whatever.
Yep. Yep. So again, that's kind of our culture today. Even more reason to commit to this 30-day plan idea, because if you don't, FOMO is going to have even more influence and be more distracting, rather than you being able to put an invitation out 2 weeks in advance and then follow it up 3, 4, 5 days later. So basically the initial invitation becomes an excuse, a good excuse to check in again and say, hey, remember that party we were talking about happening a week from now? What are you thinking? So, because each of those touch points, this is another thing too about even if people say no or can't come, that's going to happen. But the invitation, every time you invite somebody to something, it's communicating love to them in a way, because you thought about them enough to invite them, you cared enough to invite them. Does that make sense? So we had some neighbors that said no like 6 times. It's like meal, no, meal, no, meal, no, meal, no, meal. And we could have given up, or we could have, but we felt like no, every time we do it, just one more positive, loving touch point. And after 6 no's, we'd get a 7th yes. Does that make sense? So again, even in your inviting, don't feel like, oh, that was a fail. Never a fail. It's never, you can't fail. Sorry, in the inviting, I think it always communicates care, love. You thought about them. And I think that's a really good thing, a really powerful thing. But again, in order to do that well, in order to do that consistently, your missional communities have to create a specific, as you see there in that example, sustainable plan. I don't know if I've used that word yet, sustainable. Your community needs to determine what they could get excited about. If you create a plan that the group isn't excited about, feel like they don't have time for, is doing things that they don't necessarily like to do or want to do, it's not going to go well. It's got to be sustainable, got to be motivating. But the good news is that's why each of your communities creates their own plan. Like Tyler's not giving everybody their plan. Okay, we got to do Tyler's plan. That's not motivating. No, we're going to live out our plan that we created together, that we're excited about. We're excited about the details. We're available on Sunday nights or Friday nights or Saturday afternoons. We determined the places and the days and the time. We determined it. It's our plan. So we're motivated to live out our plan together. What do you think?
Todd, I think that as we continue to go forward, as we're like, since we've started with you, we've started shifting a few things in regards to missional community and just the attitude towards all of this. I think it's going to be very important for our specific community of people to start recognizing that we're doing life together, that it's not just like you said earlier, another meeting or another thing or another responsibility. Because we've had in the past couple of weeks, I think like 2 or 3 people to me have verbalized, we just have so much stuff. We have like another event, another thing after that. And it's like, we gotta somehow, and I don't know the answer to it, change the connotation of these events to where it's like, we're just doing life together. This isn't like another thing that you have to go do. We want to like do these things together. It just, even the changing the idea changes like the part, I think.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's a lot of it's like a gospel issue, I would argue, because it's like Jesus called us to do all of life together. Like it's an all of life commitment to follow Jesus. And so a lot of times it's like, well, I don't want to spend my time doing that Jesus thing. And there's also right, like I want to be able to do this, or this. And not that those things are bad things. And also, and I talked about this Sunday, there are things that are optional. Like, hey, you're tired, you're burnt out, like you don't have to go a hiking thing with all the other people. But if we're having a committed time of prayer together, like that's the thing everybody that could possibly be at should be at. Like, and so like learning what's important and what's not, and also like, yeah, nobody wants to take a meal sometimes on like a Friday night to someone that, you know, worked all week, but that's what Jesus would do. So we're going to do it because, well, we're imaging Jesus. Yeah, my thoughts.
Good.
That's right.
Point of
What do you think?
encouragement. Point of encouragement. The more you will commit to this, the easier it'll get. The easier it'll get to plan. The easier it'll get to follow through on those plans, because people will get comfortable with it in a good way. Does that make sense? So this is helping set good expectations. I think that's an important way to say it. So in our family with my kids, we've got certain expectations, like to be part of this family, to be a productive part of this family. This is how we function as a family. And so you're going to share responsibility. You're gonna do chores on Saturday mornings. Everybody is. Their chores to help the family function. So that's an expectation. Well, in the beginning, it sounds terrible. It's like, Saturday morning chores. I'd rather be doing something else on Saturday mornings. But now it's, my kids don't even, nothing negative. It's like Saturday morning chores, everybody. And they get at it. They know that's what it means to help the family function, and they do it with a good attitude. Well, that came from consistency and this expectation of what good family responsibility looks like. So that's also what you're doing with your plans here, 30-day plans, creating expectations and then helping the family live according to those expectations. It's kind of what you're saying there, Tyler.
So you would start, like, in my thought, like that plan that you sent out did seem like a lot, even for like my family and like our life, but not if you started with like a couple like core things, like, hey, we've got 5 things on our calendar for April that we're going to do as a community, and we're going to try to do mission and family and Bible. And then the next month, maybe it's like, hey, I really like doing that. Like, let's add this thing in. Is that?
Yep. Good. Good.
Yep.
Yep. Well said. Yeah. I will say, so that plan that you're looking at, that is a mature plan.
Yeah. So I would love to highlight everything you put on here. So I think there were some questions at the bottom. I'm trying to pull them up real fast. Do you have yours, Zach? So you said considerations. So context, seasons, gifting, size, and maturity.
You want me to comment on that or what?
Is there a question? I would love for like Cody and Sammy and Lane to like give what they think about what would work best in their groups, like, hey, this is our context, this is our maturity, this is our gifting, those sorts of thoughts.
Good. Yep, let's hear a few. And do you guys understand what is meant by seasons? You're going to have seasons of life or seasons even in the calendar year that are different, and so you have to adjust. You create a plan, but then you adjust the plan, like say around holiday season, around Christmas time. Okay, it's obviously different than normal than the rest of the year. Certain things happening connected with Christmas, family events, whatever. So you've got your plan, but you adjust it accordingly with seasons. Somebody already said summertime. Very different rhythm of life, right? Weather's good, people are outside, they're looking for stuff to do, hiking, volleyball, frisbee, whatever it is, because the weather's good. And so we adjust the plan to good weather. We adjust the plan to bad weather. But if you don't have a plan to adjust, it all becomes like a mess. And then becomes frustrating for everybody and discouraging for everybody because things aren't happening consistently because you don't have a plan. So anyway, that's that seasonal adjustment. Okay, back to you. Say specifically, Tyler, what you wanted them to answer.
Yeah, Cody. So like, what in your mind, and we got Daniel here as well, he's in your group, but like based off of like the season that we're stepping into and the context of your family and like what do you see as like, how would you live? Like, what is your thoughts on how your group would live this out right now?
Right now, as if I were to look at it today, I would think that about half the people would jump in and be like, on fire, and about half the other people, it would be like pulling teeth to ever get them to do something missional.
So what would your plan look like? Like, what would you do? Like, what would you suggest?
My plan, though, I mean, I like a lot of this that's on this sheet. I think it is very doable. I think it will. It may even work better than it being overwhelming and having it every Thursday. Now we've talked about backing it down to 2 and doing more stuff, missional, more stuff out of my house, out of people's houses. I mean, I think it'll give us more opportunity for the adults to get out and sometimes do things without having to obviously have to worry about childcare. If we're alternating weeks with women and men to do
Good.
DNA groups, the more I learn about this, I feel like, it's supposed to be within our group. So I'm probably going to holler at Daniel here real soon in the next week or so and, see if he wants to form one with one or two other guys that are, have been coming that are what I believe meat eaters. I really love that, what you say. That's hilarious. But I think this idea is very practical. Spreading it out. Yeah, maybe we won't do every single thing, but we'll grow into it.
Yeah.
But I really like the ideas. I think that if we can do more of these missional fun things and make it where, yes, we're serving, yes, we're doing the missional, and make it fun, we can continue to encourage our lost friends that we're talking about that are not existed on that list to join us.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Great.
I like
Great.
the way it's headed. I think we're growing, and I think that there's a lot of mixture in my group. We've had some people that have been in there for quite a while. We have some people that are have a really good faith. There's people that are growing. People, I mean, I'm definitely one of those people. But we're all over the board in our group, I feel like, and especially now that I'm about to have 2 to 3 new families that don't know our expectations, haven't heard what we've been talking about and teaching for the last year or two. So may find ways to recover some of this stuff and
Yeah.
just to, get everyone up to speed. I'm probably babbling now, so quiet.
No, very well said. That is the making of disciples, everybody. You've got a whole spectrum of people, lost people, almost Christian people, baby milk drinkers. Okay. But by living with this kind of consistency and intentionality, that's how they all move towards Jesus. Doesn't matter where they're at in the spectrum, that's how they all grow towards Jesus. So, Cody, what you said, well said. You got people all over the place, and you're trying to help people all over the place take appropriate steps towards either finding Jesus or becoming more mature like Jesus. So I like how you talked about the mess. Okay, beautiful mess. Sammy, you mentioned something I was gonna, or you both kind of, you see in that plan that most everything is rotating. Okay, it's not happening every week, right? You notice that, right? The DNA is rotating, the family meal night's rotating, missional the parties, and it's rotating. And so I think if you set that expectation, you will see that people have time or can begin to organize their lives in such a way that they make time for this to be sustainable. So there's nothing there. There's nothing there's nothing there there's nothing there that's happening every week in the same way at the same time in the same place. So that should be good news too. Okay. I think it keeps it fresh. It's not, oh, Wednesday night Bible study. Yep, next week, Wednesday night Bible. Yep, next Wednesday night Bible study. It's like, you wonder why people get bored or why it stagnates.
I'm burnt out in this.
Yeah, it's
area.
like, so what other practical things? Sammy, you got anything else?
No, I was just gonna say, like, I'm amped up. I'm excited and I'm
Good.
ready to bring people along, So no, I again, these Zoom calls and kind of the steps we're taking forward, like I'm just like, let's go.
Good. That's
So
awesome. That's awesome. Whoa, Lane's got a friend. Partner. What's he think?
This is Callie.
Okay. What's
Um,
What's Callie think?
She is I'm not sure. She has just joined this meeting. As far as what I think, first of all, I'm sorry I'm late. My work kind of like exploded. But I hopped on as soon as I could. From what I've heard is so our group is, I feel like there's like this really there's like this core group of people that always come and they always provide the food, and I mean those people, they do what they're doing, and then there's like this separate group that's like in and out a lot. And so you brought up the idea of rotation, and I feel like in my group that would help a lot, maybe draw those people in, because it seems like those people, they'll plan on coming during the week, and then as that day comes up, they kind of like, there's always like some excuse that happens or something that happens. I understand life happens, but it almost just seems like it's a weekly deal.
Yeah.
And so I feel like you've talked about the idea of having a rotation to the activities and changing up the activities and not always doing the in-house meeting thing. I feel like that would be a really good way to draw people, not maybe draw people in is the right vocabulary, but make people attracted to coming and being more intentive with coming and joining the group, and like we all provide items for the food and whatnot. And I feel like that rotation may spark those guys' interest more, because I can understand people getting burnt out on meeting up at the same house and doing a Bible study. It's just the same formula. And so with the summer coming up, the summers we've always changed up the formula, the season of what we did. And with what we've been talking about, and because the last 2 summers I've been with Thrive, I personally wasn't armed with the knowledge that I have now and the experience that I have now. And so I feel like moving forward, this would be a great opportunity to take advantage of everything that this group has learned, but just as an individual, how we could reach out and how we could help be a bigger part of our community as a church, and how to, reach people that are lost and like we've talked about in previous stuff, and bring people that don't necessarily want to come to a church thing, but maybe just want to come hang out with friends and do stuff like that. And so, I feel like that this curriculum that Tyler started was in a really good timing, in that sense of, the summer's, easy for people. It's nice. And so it gives people opportunity to not only just in our community groups, but outside of our community groups. We did this big long list of things at our last community night we had, or long list of people. And this summer, it makes it more attractive to people that necessarily aren't Christians. It makes them more attractive. Hey, do you want to come hang out with our friends, versus, hey, do you want to come do this church thing? And so, that in aid with the summer, I think, it is a great opportunity to actually put into action what we've been talking about.
Yep. Awesome. Yep, you guys, in terms of timing, you're in a good place, because we've been talking about this last month. We're getting to the end of March. You've got Easter, so there'll be some opportunities there to invite, but then, summer's just beyond that. And so if you can get clear on who your mission is, like we've been talking about, who is the good soil, so basically your list, and then get a plan that is sustainable for the summer months, May, June, July, August. I think you guys can see some really good stuff happen through May, June, July, and August. So weather's going to be good, get out with people, love them well. We're going to be talking on our next call about, okay, when we throw these parties or these meals or volleyball at the park or whatever it is, how do we communicate with them well? How do we speak well? How do we build trust? How do we do that? And so that'll be important in all of this, because it's possible to organize a bunch of good relational things and still not be very intentional. We made that mistake previously. Okay. Lots of good relational activity, lots of non-Christians around. But we didn't know how to be intentional. We didn't know how to build trust. We didn't know how to get deeper into people's stories. We didn't know how to share our story. We didn't know how to connect it to Jesus. Like, how do you go to the park, go to the pub, or go wherever and talk about life and talk about your story and connect it to Jesus? And so that'll be a really, really important step in all of this. I think you're getting everything really well up to this point. And so our next call will really focus on how do we become a church that knows how to be intentional in conversation, whether it's at work, school, the pub, the park, the football game. How do we be intentional in conversation? So that's what we'll do next time. Okay, guys? Hey, love it. Love what you guys are doing and how you're progressing. I think you're in a really good place. And I think you're set up well for Easter and set up well moving into the summer. So let's finish up. I'd love to pray. You need help with this, supernatural help. So don't forget that. This is not a human thing we're doing. It's a supernatural thing we're doing that needs supernatural help. So let's pray for that. Father, thanks for my brothers and sisters there. And yeah, just really encouraged by their love for you, their love for each other, their love for people in their communities. And I pray that that love would just deepen and grow. And Father, I pray that you would just show them next steps. Show them what you want their communities to do, who you want their communities to love. Um, just give them clarity about the details. Help them create these just relational plans we're talking about. It's really what it is. It's just bringing consistency and intentionality to relationships. So it's a relationship plan. So I pray that you would show them the way forward with that and encourage them, keep them safe physically, keep them safe spiritually in the days ahead also. And I pray that you would continue to produce much fruit in their lives and through their lives in the coming weeks. So, Father, we love you, and we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
And for fun.